Greetings, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced by the League in collaboration with WTJX for well over 25 years. I'm Lavern Ragster, a member and past president of the League. This has been a challenging time for us all as a territory and a nation. As we adapt to this pandemic and social distancing, we're going virtual with our broadcast this year. It is our goal to still provide programs of value as you prepare to vote in November. With me today are three persons running for the position of senator in the St. Thomas District. Thank you, candidates, for being here. You have been informed in advance of the guidelines of the program. After briefly introducing yourselves, I will pose questions of timely interest. The first responder will rotate throughout the process. 90 seconds will be the response time for most questions unless stated in advance. So let's begin with brief introductions. And I'm going to ask Senator Marvin Blyden first to please kindly state your name, ballot number, and political affiliation, if any.
Hi, I'm Marvin Blyden. I'm a Democrat, and my number is 2 on the November 3rd ballot. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And so, Ms. Carla Joseph, could you please introduce yourself?
Greetings. My name is Carla Joseph, and I am a Democratic senatorial nominee, and I'm number 11 on the general election ballot. Thank you.
Welcome. Glad to have you. And then bringing us in with great aplomb will be Senator Dwayne DeGraff. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Dwayne DeGraff. I'm number 5 on the ballot, independent senator. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Our first question asks why you think you should be elected to the position of senator for the 34th Legislature. This is one of the questions allowing a response longer than 90 seconds. You will each have 2 minutes for this response to the following question. I'm going to start with Senator Blyden as an incumbent. On St. Thomas and St. Croix, only one seat each has been vacated. So many of the challengers are hoping to unseat an incumbent. What have been your major accomplishments over the past 2 years that support your being retained in your position as senator? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ragster, for that question. And before I answer the question, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and WTJX for this opportunity. Why I think I should be reelected as a senator. First of all, I'm a very hard-working, honest, dependable senator. I work well with others. I'm an excellent listener, and I get along with all my colleagues. I believe that my work ethic and the work I've support thus far has shown that I have been a good senator and should continue to be as one of the senators. I believe some of the legislation in terms of accomplishments, for instance, I tried to pick a legislation that dealt with gas stations and 1,000 feet from any dwelling. I brought an amendment that many folks are crying about in terms of gas station being built too close to homes, schools, hospitals, etc. I brought a piece of legislation championed it through the body with the help of my colleagues, and we passed it unanimously. I also brought legislation after both hurricanes in protecting homes for many Virgin Islanders when they signed up for the emergency program. Many of them were in jeopardy of losing their home because of liens being placed on their homes because the contractors were not being paid. I also championed legislation with the help of my colleagues to shepherd that through the body and got it passed. As a matter of fact, also with Act number 8297, we dealt in terms of the deal with the water situation with the back billing situation. We all passed that, and I'm proud of that also. In addition to that, I have many other pending legislation of impactful, but I just want to talk about my proudest accomplishment as a senator is um, appropriating and finding at least $40,000 in the woman empowerment movement to assist students with going to college because we don't many individuals can afford both
Thank you.
sides, etc. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. So I know you have much more to tell us. We're going to ask Senator Dwayne DeGraff to answer the same question. If if you're going to be able to retain your position as a senator, what would you say to people that makes you, in terms of your accomplishments over your term, that they should be paying attention to?
Uh, Madam Moderator, I would first like to say thank you to people, and I thank you to the League of Women Voters for continuing this great forum. I am a simple person. I come to work every day. I attend all of my community meetings. I keep myself relevant by attending many different functions in the community. I keep an open door policy where I meet with constituents. I return phone calls, and I produce legislation relevant to the community. In regards to community service, I like to do cleanups and keep the place around, engage in different activities, donating, cleaning up schools and doing different things for the community. So I keep relevant in that. I have legislation to honor local Virgin Islanders and also move the difference, the scale of equality for Virgin Islanders on a different scale. I've had bills passed currently this year enacted as law, where I have bill for the Virgin National Guard members when they come out to work, that they can work and get paid their honest day's wage. Individuals who the government auctions off taxi licenses, taxi medallions, where veterans auction, they have to return it to a veteran for that sale. Also, legislation to keep the government credit cards in check, that we don't be losing money off for illegal use or ill use of credit cards. And for Vitron, they generate revenue by allowing for advertisement on buses and bus stops. So I come out to work on a regular basis. I'm here the access, and I continue to serve the people of the territory basis. So as a senator and as your candidate, I am Dwayne DeGraff, number 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, when I ask Ms. Joseph this question, I have to change it a bit. As a challenger, you also are aware that there's one seat on St. Thomas and one seat on St. Croix. So the idea is that you would expect to replace an incumbent. Explain for us, please, what qualities, training, experience, and expertise you have that make you best suited for this position, and even to unseat rather an incumbent if necessary. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you kindly, Dr. Ragster, for the question. And before I delve deep into that, answering that question, I'd like to first thank you and the League of Women Voters for consistently hosting this Meet the Candidates segment. In addition to that, I would like to thank WTJX and the staff, the professional staff who reached out to many of us so that we can get linked up online to actually make our presentation. I have worked 10 consecutive years in the legislature. I was a chief of staff for former Senator George Goodwin. I also have had the opportunity to draft legislation particularly geared towards low-income housing when I worked in the legislature. So I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with the process that we have to undergo. Also, part of my work experience is grant writing and grant management. I must indicate that I have done a really good job working with a team to manage funds judiciously and also manage them fiscally responsibly. And in doing that, we have been able to spend all of our money in accordance to the rules and the regulations where the grant was given. And we've done a really great job in doing that when I was at the Virgin Islands Housing Authority. I'm currently at the Department of Human Services, and we're working with them to do the same thing. It takes a team, but we have to have a right team with a right purpose and a right mission to actually deliver on behalf of our people. And I believe, based on my background in financial management, that I'm one of those persons who can do that. My name is Carla Joseph, and I'm number 11 on the ballot. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much. Well, now that we have a sense of who we're speaking to, thank you all. We're going to get into some of the questions that have been some sent to the league, others league members put together. The question goes, the first person to ask to be answering this will be Senator DeGraff. So, and this will be 90 seconds, sir. In the November general election, there will be a referendum question that asks if a convention should be held to adopt the revised Organic Act or portions of it as the constitution for the territory. What is your opinion on this referendum question? 90 seconds, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I believe in that rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, let's go ahead with a document that is already that is already in Congress, because it was written originally by Congress, and utilize it and adapt and amend it in the territory. So I support that 100%. It was what I believed in from 10 was in the 32nd legislature. So I think it's a very good start for us to go. As a people, we need to be able to govern ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, and you have no qualms. That's what you want to say.
No qualms with it at all.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the second person to answer this will be Ms. Joseph. So the same question, do you think that we should adopt the revised Organic Act? We should hold a convention that will adopt the revised Organic Act or portions of it as the constitution of the territory. What is your position? 90 seconds.
Thank you kindly for the question, Dr. Ragster. I have had the opportunity from since I was 10 years old in 1980 to hear about the constitutional conventions and know that we have been historically just spinning our wheels to have some semblance of self-determination here in the Virgin Islands. We have to make a big step, a bold step. And if the Organic Act is one act that we can utilize to determine our political status here in the Virgin Islands, I would say yes. Let's move forward. I had hoped that we would have taken some of the deficiencies that was sent down to us from Congress and the office of the president and clean it up and send it back out, but that did not happen. So let's move forward. Let's try to make a bold and courageous step to determine our future, because the time is now. Thank you kindly.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Senator Blyden, I know you're familiar with this topic. Could you please tell us whether or not you think that we should go forward with this referendum or not?
Thank you for that question. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We have tried several times and to no avail. I believe that, yes, we do want a constitution, but in the interim, we should adopt the revised Organic Act as the constitution moving forward. As was stated, it will be a step in terms of our self-determination. Now going back to the first question, since I have some time, I just want to also add that I believe that experience do matter. And from the 31st legislature, I have been the co-chair of the finance committee, and we have passed a balanced budget every year since I've been a senator. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion. I want to thank you again for the question. And yes, definitely it's a start in the right direction in terms of adopting the revised Organic Act moving forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I mean, people always talk about how hard it is for Virgin Islanders to come to consensus. This is great. Wow, I like this. All right. Our next question is something that's probably right on your minds at this moment because it's making us do this program this way. And the question is the COVID-19 or the new coronavirus pandemic has reaffirmed our fears of the territory being a one commodity economy, obviously based on tourism. It makes us very vulnerable economically. Can you identify two industries or economic activities that could significantly supplement or replace or complement tourism and explain what you can do as a senator to help their development moving forward? With this question, we will begin with Ms. Joseph. As I said, it will continue to rotate through. You can always figure out who it is. And you have 90 seconds here.
Thank you kindly, Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. One of the industry that we haven't tapped into greatly is, of course, the technology industry. We could do so much more with technology. We could do billing. We could also do building of motherboards. These are things that people can do at home. So we really need to start to look into technology industry. Also, there is recreational sports. And one of my favorite sports is horse racing. You could have horse racings being conducted as well as pari-mutuel betting being conducted, even though we have the COVID-19. Those are avenues that we could bring in revenues, a lot of money for us. And I would also like to add adventure sports. That's another key area that we could utilize as well. So those are some of the areas I think we should be exploring right now. And I hope I would have the opportunity to do so as your senator. My name again is Carla Joseph, and I'm number 11 on the ballot. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. So I now will ask Senator Blyden the same question. So do you have some ideas you think of alternative types of economic activity for the territory?
Definitely, but not really alternative, but areas that we have not been and need to tap into. Number one, the marine industry. There are many, many jobs, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are surrounded by water. And I've been preaching that for some time now, but as a matter of fact, moving forward, I'm going to press even more harder, being that we have seen what tourism only does for us. So we can dive into the marine industry. We need to dive into more boutique and small businesses, for instance, like Airbnbs. Since many of our hotels are closed, they can fill a void and at the same time help to bring in revenues to the territory. That has been a very lucrative business for many individuals, and I believe it's an opportunity for many local individuals to gain some wealth at that point. Also, we speak about technology. I want to speak also about, in terms of small businesses that deals with, for instance, electrical construction, electrical plumbing, masonry, carpentry, you name it. That industry, we need to train more of our young people so they can get into that industry, because guess what? Despite any pandemic, you must maintain your home. You must be able to continue to operate with many businesses, and those individuals can also keep the economy afloat at the same time, help the fellow Virgin Islanders. So that's just three areas I think we need to tap into and expand in order to help us maintain ourselves during these difficult times, whereas we don't have many tourists coming in here, but at the same time, we can help ourselves, to include agriculture and many other industries. Thank you so much for the question. Marvin Blyden, number 2 on your November 3rd ballot.
Thank you very much. So, Senator DeGraff, I believe you get a chance to answer this question now. What would you do? What are the industries that you think would help us with loss of tourism, and what would you do to bring forward those ideas?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I ran on my 2 terms in terms of what I call an ATM machine: agriculture, tourism, technology, and the marine industries. And with tourism industry out of the way at this present time, looking at agriculture, we have to set up where we can feed ourselves, put those things in place to start being able to feed ourselves, and set up to start doing um, transportation of produce and stuff to other islands within our region. The technology has been mentioned before by the candidates. That's where we are now. Technology can generate billions of dollars in revenue. And again, as was mentioned also, the marine industry is right around us, is all a part of the whole transportation and agriculture and everything that we have presently. Those are the means of doing it. I also think that we need to educate our children in terms of this same pandemic, what's happening now as to what may happen in the future. So we start to train them in CTE where we can learn to sustain themselves from now and support themselves. I think that's the way to go. DeGraff, number 5 on your ballot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree that's an area that there's opportunity for much conversation, and this is difficult, but hopefully we'll get a chance to come back to some other parts of it. Our next question, I need to start with Senator Blyden. Yes, you're number 1. And we switched this question up so that the incumbents have a slightly different version. This one will be 60 seconds, okay? One of the groups in our community that is continuously underserved or appears to be continuously underserved by most elected officials is the disabled. As a senator in the legislature, were you able to address any of the concerns of the disabled during your term? And if not, are you aware of these needs? And if not, how will you find out what you can do once you do know how to address those needs? And we're going to start with you, Senator Blyden, for 60 seconds.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rapsa, for that question. I am keenly aware of many of the needs of our disabled community. As a matter of fact, I speak to the coordinator for the government executive team, Mr. Julian Henley, on a daily basis. We have legislation working on together in order to assist many of the challenges and the needs moving forward. I know I sponsored the Packard bill in terms of individuals being identified when they're stopped. I know there's training going on a regular basis with police officers and others to understand what these individuals are going through. And there are many, many other concerns and many other areas in terms of what needs to be dealt with. And like I said, yes, I am aware of many of the issues. I am working with that individual, Mr. Julian Henley, and I look forward to bringing forth said legislation. But as a matter of fact, in the past, I have also sponsored and worked with other senators when it comes to bringing forth meaningful legislation on behalf of those individuals with disabilities, to include before I get to the body with housing.
Thank you very much. Senator DeGraff, the same question, whether or not you're aware of the issues associated with people that are disabled in our community, and have you put forward anything that has assisted them? Senator DeGraff? I guess he's not hearing me for some reason. Senator DeGraff is, oh, his IT is frozen. Senator DeGraff,
Yes,
are you there?
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, could you please start? Did you hear my question?
Yes, I did, in regards to the disabled.
Disabled, whether or not you are aware of their needs or are able to move forward with you have been able to move forward with any things that have assisted them. Please go ahead for the 60 seconds.
Thank you. I'm very much aware of the challenges that the disabled have in this community and many other communities. I have legislation passed in terms of a senior registry that allows for persons 60 years of age and older who live alone and disabled persons to register with the Department of Human Services. So in times of these pandemics and particularly with man-made and non-man-made disasters, we can also reach out to them and find out if services to them. So the seniors and disabled persons are ride free on Vitran, and Vitran had an issue with being able to fund it I provided another legislation that is now law to allow for advertising on buses and bus stops so that they could fund that so they don't ever have to worry about having to pay for transportation and to get around and continue to be a productive persons in this community. So I am fully aware of issues for them. DeGraff, number 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I guess that leaves you, Ms. Joseph. As the question to you is a little bit different. I'm not going to ask you what you've done, but I will ask you whether or not you are aware of their needs and the conditions that of many of the disabled in our community, and whether or not you have any plans if you are elected as a senator. 60 seconds, please.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Ragster, for the question. One of the things that I really look at for us here in the Virgin Islands, and we are a tourist-driven industry, is that when our tourists come in, they have to be, who are disabled, they have to walk downstairs or be lifted up. Why don't we have yet the Skyjet that can assist our residents or tourists who come here to safely and adequately deboard the planes? One. The second thing, so I would be looking into getting funding for that because it needs to happen now that we are meeting and being progressive as a territory. And the other item I really have a deep passion for is providing services to our disabled people. How is it that they have to come to us and not we go to our disabled people? Even person with hearing impaired, we aren't doing sufficient because this broadcast, there's no one signing so that they can translate what we're saying to them in sign language. So we have to lead by example. Thank you kindly, Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot.
Thank you, all three of you. We are definitely into some of the questions that sometimes people don't want to answer, but I appreciate your answers. So the next question is 90 seconds, and we start out with Senator DeGraff. Crime has not abated, as we are all aware, and we continue to see young men, women, and children being killed. This is us losing us. What do you see as the root causes of this epidemic of violence? And second, do you have any ideas that would contribute to a lessening of this loss? Senator DeGraff? 90 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. What I see as a loss of this is a whole generation of young men from our territory eradicated, sadly, by each other. Right now, I have legislation in regards to what I've found out is that a lot of weapons, guns in particular, are traveling through the mail legally because you can sell the guns, ship the guns down to the territory in part and not register them. So now I have legislation into when you purchase those parts legally in the States and you send them down, they have to be registered here. So we could keep a track also on those type of firearms that come into the territory. Again, I do support the police department and the clergy and the people of the territory. Also, we need to step up and do better to try to change some of the things we are seeing in the community at this time. Thank you. DeGraff, number 5.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. Ms. Joseph, we're back to you. So the question is linked to crime. Okay, the question is we know that you know the conditions. So do you have any ideas about the root causes, and do you have any ideas about what you would do to contribute to reducing the negativity of this situation? 90 seconds.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Ragster, for the question. One of the main root causes, it starts within the home, within the families. So we really have to start to support and do a lot more social work and fund programs for families who are at risk. I had an opportunity years ago with the U.S. District Attorney's Office under Hezekiah Jennings, and God rest his soul in peace. We went on a retreat with young people to St. John, and we were mentoring them and following them throughout. And I must say, my mentee is doing really well. And I also want to add that I have worked tirelessly in the trenches, providing employment and training services to our at-risk young people. And I've served under the Youth Bill program over 100 young people. And I tell you that only 3 of them are incarcerated. And they all had, when they were charged, they had to man up and say what they did. So that is part of it. Those social services and funding those social services to help support at-risk families is the key. And when I get elected, I will be making sure that that's part of my marching order. Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Joseph. Senator Blyden?
A question. We are losing a generation of young Black males in particular, and I believe what we can do and we should do in terms of basically decreasing, okay, you cannot stop it, but decreasing these type of incidents and losing our young people. Number 1 is education. Number 2 is opportunities. As my fellow panelists, Ms. Joseph, spoke in reference to, I have also, as a housing manager, seen many of those young folks from the Youth Build program and assisted many of them, brought them to the program, assisting inspection, etc., with those individuals, and those type of programs do work. Number 4, though, it takes a community. It takes all of us. As a matter of fact, I personally, myself, as just went through a situation with my family, with my son, and I can attest I've done everything I was supposed to do with all of my children, but at the same time, things do happen. Children have their own mind. You can take someone to the water, but you cannot make them drink it. So my point is, we must have the community as a whole contribute in terms of assisting these individuals with steering away from company and steering away from those type of activities. I believe all of the above will help, but most importantly, though, we need more training program for our young people to give them opportunities, because as stated, many of those individuals who have been involved in this program have stayed on the right path. Again, Senator Marvin Blyden, number 2 on your ballot.
Thank you very much, Senator Blyden. This is a difficult question for our community, and I appreciate all of your answers. Now, we're trying to do some things with respect to diverse questions here, so we're going to shift gears. And the question is, in some states, consideration is being given to cutting public pension benefits due to budgetary shortfalls. It's happening in a number of places. Do you see this happening in the Virgin Islands? And if so, if it was proposed, what would be your response as a senator? And we're going to begin with you, Ms. Joseph, assuming you are in the position, yeah? So, and you have 60 seconds, sorry.
Well, in looking at our pension benefits and assuming that I would be in the position, it starts with us first. We have on the books that a senator can retire after 6 years, 3 consecutive terms in the legislature. A regular employee has to stay 10 years to be vested and to be able to retire. So we have to change that first. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror and have the courage to change that. How is it that senators have the privilege to retire and get their pension after 6 years, and our regular employees do not? Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. Thank you.
Making friends. I'm only teasing. In 60 seconds, Senator Blyden, could you respond to the question about whether or not you would see the territory cutting public pension benefits?
Thank you so much for that question, and I'm going to be 100% right now. As a public official and a senator, I cannot see us doing any cut at this point, but at the end of the day, we need all hands on deck. Unless we have gone after every, and I mean every, tax collection that's out there on the streets with testimony that it's over $300 million, almost $300 million out there on the street, until we have gone after every income tax individual that owed at the lieutenant governor's office, land, where they said about $197 million, until we have done everything in our power to assist in terms of coming up with legislation, in terms of coming up with revenue sources, in terms of coming up with bond issuance. No, I cannot see us doing that as a body or myself as a senator. I think it's wrong. Folks have worked hard all of their lives, and they are entitled to those funds. I'm a member of the system for over 26 years, so I
Yes,
would be
sir.
entitled myself. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Number two, Marvin Blyden. Is there a chance to rebuttal?
Not, you can save it for when I ask if you have something you'd like to expand on, make a note, and that's what you may speak to if you choose to do
I need
so.
to. I need to. Thank you.
All right. I look forward to hearing that. So, Senator DeGraff,
Yes, ma'am.
what is your position regarding cutting public pensions here in the territory? This is something that you support as a senator?
Madam Chair, definitely not. 100%. I would no. I don't
Okay.
agree with it because I've had a chance to work 34 years for the government and retire. And there are people, my mother, for instance, who's rest her soul, worked for 30 years in the government and retired making $17,000 a year. So I don't agree with that at all. I have submitted legislation in regards to trying to create a tier 3, where we would take existing persons coming in and put them onto a 401k type process. Also, I had a bill passed that the governor vetoed in regards to any decisions going to be made by the board to have to come before the Senate first, so we could get together and try again to make some alterations to that. But I don't support any cuts to the persons who have worked their lives and we relied on this. And now that to this point that we want to cut it, I don't agree with it. So we're working hard. I have some legislation to move some, I might be minor drop in the buckets toward it, but again, it's on the books.
All right. Thank you, sir. As I said, these are not easy questions. So everybody needs to focus because this one is a multiple question. And it'll be 90 seconds for your response. I'm going to ask you how you rate the following ideas to raise revenues for GERS, one of our favorite topics around here. A, consider the 14-cent tax on gasoline to contribute to GERS. B, restructure the Diageo benefits to save ourselves more dollars. That's the proposal. C, as the governor suggested, we seek a significant loan or a refinancing of our debt. And we're going to start with Senator Blyden. Sir, 90 seconds.
Thank you for that. First of all, I'm going to start with the restructuring of our debt. I believe that should not be the first choice. In terms of excise tax at 14 cents, we can look at that. But at the same time, I believe, like I stated just a while ago, we have over $400+ million on the street. I have put in legislation that once, and those are money that have been there for years. Those revenues, once collected, go directly toward the GRS. So many of myself and my colleagues have different legislation that goes toward the system, and we are going to try and bring something comprehensive before the end of this term. But in addition to that, I also have another bill that seeks to deal with wire transfers. Last year alone, we had over $160+ million in wire transfer fees, and not a penny went to this government. I also have a bill that's going to bring in at least $6 million, and we're going to try and put all of that toward the GRS system. And many other of my colleagues have bills coming forth. So those options you gave me, yes, they are feasible, but I believe they.
Okay, I'm hoping Senator Blyden is okay. It sounds like he may have had an issue with his computer. So I'll give him some more time later and he'll get back to us and let us know if everything is all right. And we'll go to Senator DeGraff.
Yes, thank you. I hope my colleague is okay too.
Yes, I'm hoping he will signal to us.
In regard, excuse me, the gasoline tax of 14 cents, I would support that. The reconstruction of I would also support that. A refinance of the debt, I would support as long as you don't use our matching fund run over monies, which is probably one of our number one revenue generators. So I wouldn't support that. Regards to, we need to do a better job on collecting of monies that we have outstanding. We have a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars outstanding to be collected. And collectively, I have also where we could throw in the rental of the Cancrane School, put that money toward GERS. Any excess money in the budget after what the governor recommended, we put straight toward GERS. So those are some legislation that I'm looking at also. Thank you for the question. DeGraff number 5.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, you're saying these are legislations that you're about to bring. You haven't brought those forward yet. Okay.
Correct. I have them in and waiting to be heard, but they are already written.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, Ms. Joseph, let me repeat. I'm asking how you rate the following as opportunities to raise revenues for GERS: 14-cent tax on gasoline, restructure Diageo benefits, or get a loan or refinance the debt. How do you feel about those suggestions?
Okay, so my rating for the 14% on the gasoline tax would be about 65%. I would want to tackle that first, and then move on to looking at next the reconstructing and refinancing the Diageo deal. I think I would rate that maybe about a 15%. And then we have about 20% on the restructuring of a loan, because that's refinancing. But in restructuring the loan, we have to be clear on what we're going to use as our source of fund to leverage use as collateral in addition for this loan. So those are key items I would be looking at. I want to be very clear on one item when we had our previous question, when you asked about reducing and looking at our GRS system. My focus was primarily on the legislature. There are a number of items we have to look at as well, as far as how we look at our pension system, but that is the only area that I would look at reducing the pension at. Thank you kindly.
Okay. I think we're going to try to go on to the next question. And then this time is going very fast, unfortunately. And we're trying to figure out how to get Senator Blyden back into the program. Anyway, so the next question is, if we are successful in getting the revised Organic Act of 1954 approved as our constitution, we can then enact changes in the organization of our government. Are there any changes you would like to see, or are you satisfied with our current structure and organization? Or perhaps you have some suggestions as to changes in the Organic Act that you would like to see. And we have 90 seconds, and we would start with Senator DeGraff.
Thank you for the question. I believe that the people passed a referendum to allow for a 9-member legislature. And I think I work for the people, and I think that should be adhered to. We look into it and make it happen if that's what the people want for representation. In regards to we have to put ourselves on access where we're not second to anyone. In the Virgin Islands, we have this thing about wherever somebody come from, away they're better. And I think if we start to look at the assets that we have, our people, our land, the sea around us, and utilize those, then we put those in legislation and make us a powerhouse in the Caribbean and in the territory and the world. So there are different things, but it is where do we start and which area do we want to start with? With our identity, which maybe has to be first, and then we move out from there. I support it again 100%. Doing DeGraff number 5. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, Ms. Joseph, let me make sure I'm saying the question clearly. We are trying to have the revised Organic Act move forward as our constitution. When we enact the changes, one of the things we might look at is organization of our government. Are there changes you would like to see, or are you satisfied with our current structure? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you, kindly, Dr. Ragster, similar to Senator DeGraff, definitely I would like to see the restructuring of the legislature, the reduction in the number of individuals who elected. You know, it might be me cutting off my nose to spite my face, but when you're a public servant, you have to take into consideration what your people want you to do. And that's a mandate that they wanted the legislature to be reduced. So, of course, that would be one of the things that I would definitely want to see in there. You want to be able to reduce that so that you're reducing how much money is being expended. And that money could be a saving that could go to help the GERS system and to provide services for at-risk young people and their families. Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very intrigued by your answers. Nobody wants to take a stab at the rest of the government. Maybe Senator Blyden does. Senator Blyden, you're back with us?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Glad to have you. Okay, we're going to have to go back, and I'll give you some more time on the question that we stopped on, but let me ask you to answer this one now. If we get a revised Organic Act as the Constitution, are there any changes in the government organization structure that you would like to see?
Well, first of all, if we do get the revised Organic Act to be passed as the Constitution, we can only use what's in that act. And basically, there are other things I would like to see to amend that act if we can. And one of them is to be involved in CARICOM and dealing with our neighbors from the different islands. That's a good thing. We are part of the Caribbean, but yet still we cannot, based on the current the way we're set up right now. In addition to that, there are other mandates that the people requested, and I would like to see us, yes, moving forward and doing likewise. So yes, there are things I would like to see in that regard. In addition to that, I must say, though, that when it came to my last question, or my response to the last question before, when it came to the GERS, I just wanted to add also that when it comes to individual retirement from this body, I can understand the concern. Many folks have came to me and inquired, and I told them only one senator I know who qualified for full benefits was Senator Lavern Ragster, who did 24 years. You get a portion after 6 years. So it's like how all individuals, after 10 years as a government employee and you're 55 years or older, you can collect a pension. So I just wanted to put it on the record because, you know, y'all don't want to put half of the story. Thank you so much.
Well, time has moved so quickly. I knew I was going to have a good time with you folks. We're now at our final question. We have 60 seconds to each of you for this question, and then you get the opportunity to do a closing statement for 60 seconds. So the question is, are there any areas that we have not discussed that you would like to address, or something that we spoke about that you wanted to expand on? And we're going to start out with Senator DeGraff. For 60 seconds, sir.
Yes, I would like, thank you for the question. I would like to see where organizations such as the League of Women Voters and many of the other powerful sororities, fraternities, and organizations in the community get together, send representatives, or put out a forum where they have their input. The clergy, the people of the territory come together with the legislature, with the executive branch, and we sit down and determine where do we want the Virgin Islands to, what direction do we want the Virgin Islands to head in. And then we do it that way and systematically start to work on it. That's what I would like to see as a senator, and those are some things that I would like to see done and will try to get done. Dwayne DeGraff, number 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Joseph, what would you, is there some area you would like to speak on that we spoke about before, something you want to expand on, or something we haven't spoken about?
Well, we haven't touched on housing, which I think is a critical item. I grew up in public housing, And still, we have a lot of the apartments in our public housing inventory that is in disrepair from since the hurricane. Our people are living in substandard housing. I would love to be able to have an opportunity to work on providing funding to help renew and revitalize our public housing community, namely, so that our people can live in an area that they deserve to live in, and that they feel comfortable and safe to live in. So that's one area. Also, education. We didn't touch anything on education.
Right.
We just went over perimeters and that's a very critical area that we really needed to talk about, especially with the uncertainty of COVID and educating our next generation and how they are learning and how their families are surviving in this uncertain time. So funding is critical to support all, and I love to look after funding. Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. Thank you.
All right. And so the next person, I guess, Senator Blyden, you get to the last question, the last opportunity, because I need to close out the program. I'm being.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there are three areas quickly. Housing, of course, since I'm the housing chair for the last 6 years, economic development, and COVID-19, the pandemic we're dealing with right now. Quickly, when it comes to housing, we didn't really talk about that, but I know I shepherded Act number 8230 that dealt with a rezoning for the new Duno housing community to high rise, etc. I was very proud of that. Also, I have also went out and done some advocacy on behalf of the housing authority with many of the young men that's on the corner, had all of them sign the paperwork in order to get them jobs that's coming on board shortly to repair current terrace, also contact notes, and with a new development at like I said, Duno and Tonki.
Well, we've come to the end of the program. Let me ask all three candidates to state their name and their ballot number, and we'll start with Ms. Joseph. You would be the next first person. Yes.
Carla Joseph, number 11 on the ballot. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. And then Senator Blyden.
Marvin Blyden, number 2 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator DeGraff.
Senator Dwayne DeGraff, number 5 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you all. We've come to the end of today's program very quickly. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, I want to thank WTJX for this opportunity. We also want to thank the candidates for taking the time to be here. The League encourages all to vote in November. This year, 2020, marks the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment that granted some women the right to vote. Let's us all exercise that right, a right that so many do not have in other countries. Also, remember that this year there will be a referendum question on the ballot having to do with the Constitution for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Look for the announcements of the League's education program on the referendum right here on WTJX. And do visit the League's website at www.lwvvi.org. This is Lavern Ragster for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands. Thank you for watching, and please vote.